The great space station of the Galactic Assembly hung in the void near the Orion Nebula. It was a shining jewel of metal and light, home to 100 different alien species. For 5 standard cycles, a small group of humans had lived and worked here. They were the Earth delegation. Their leader was a man named Park Ji-hun. He was a diplomat, trained to be calm and polite no matter what. Right now he was sitting in a meeting room that looked out at the stars. The view was amazing, but Ji-hun was not looking at the stars. He was looking at the alien in front of him. The alien was Ambassador Kalar, a Velian. The Velians were tall, with smooth green skin and long necks. They saw themselves as the leaders of the assembly. Kalar was speaking, his voice a slow, condescending hum. "Your people's method of faster-than-light travel is interesting, Diplomat Park," Kalar said, "but it is fundamentally unstable. All that fire and noise, so it's brutal. Our gravity sail technology is silent, clean, and elegant. It is the correct way to travel between stars." Ji-hun had heard this speech before. He simply nodded and offered a small, polite smile. "We appreciate you sharing your knowledge, Ambassador. Our engineers are always learning. This was how it always was. The humans were here, but they were not equals. Their technology was called quaint or brutishly efficient. Their culture was seen as too emotional, too chaotic. The assembly species saw humans as a curiosity, like a clever pet that had learned to talk. Ji-hun played his part perfectly. He was quiet. He listened. He never argued. To the assembly, he was the quiet one. They did not know that his quiet was a weapon. He heard everything and he remembered it all. After the meeting, Ji-hun walked back to the human offices. The rooms given to the humans were small and plain, located in a part of the station that was not important. He found his cultural advisor Kang Soo-min waiting for him. She was looking at a simple screen, her brow furrowed in thought. "Soo-min," Ji-hun said, closing the door. "Any new whispers?" Soo-min was a xenosociologist. Her job was to understand the aliens, not just their words, but their meanings. The assembly used complex quantum communications that humans could not break, so the humans used a different method. They used old, simple radio waves to listen. The assembly thought this technology was so primitive that they never guarded against it. It was like hiding a secret in a shout. No one thought to listen for it. "Yes," Soo-min said, turning the screen towards him. "I intercepted more communications between the Velian and the Grotech delegations. They were discussing the resource output of the Martian colonies." Ji-hun read the translated text. "The aliens talked about human workers as if they were machines. They praised our physical durability and high pain tolerance. They saw the people of Mars as good for manual labor. Nothing more." "It is as we suspected," Ji-hun said. His voice still calm, but a coldness was growing in his stomach. "They do not see us as people. We are a resource, a tool to be used." "This is the most direct talk yet," Soo-min agreed. "They are making plans, Ji-hun. They are drawing lines on a map that is not theirs. For 5 cycles, the humans had been patient. They had shown only peace. They had shared some of their science, but not all of it. They had shown their art, but not their history of war. They had been the perfect quiet guests, but a line was coming. Ji-hun could feel it. A few days later, the line was drawn. A general announcement came from the Assembly High Council. All delegations were to attend an important session. Ji-hun and Soo-min put on their formal clothes and walked into the main chamber. It was a huge circular room with seats for hundreds of species. The humans sat in their usual spot near the back. Ambassador Kalar stood at the central podium, his tall figure commanding attention. "Members of the Assembly," Kalar began, his voice echoing, "we come together today in a spirit of galactic preservation. Our scouts have surveyed the world you call New Daegu." A hologram of a beautiful green and blue planet appeared above him. Ji-hun's heart beat a little faster. New Daegu was one of humanity's first and most successful colony worlds. Over 1 million people lived there. They had built cities and farms. It was home. "Our scientists have discovered a unique life form on this world." Kalar continued. The hologram zoomed in to show a patch of glowing blue moss. "The lumen moss of New Daegu is a treasure. Its bioluminescent properties are unlike anything in known space. It is a thing of perfect beauty." Ji-hun listened, his face a mask of calm. He did not like where this was going. "To protect this natural wonder," Kalar declared, "the High Council has voted. The world of New Daegu is hereby declared a protected galactic sanctuary. All industrial activity must cease. The human settlement," He paused, looking directly at Ji-hun. Is to be evacuated. The population of 1 million must be removed within one standard cycle. A murmur went through the crowd. Some aliens nodded, agreeing with this wise decision. Others looked at the humans with pity. Ji-hun felt the air leave his lungs. Evacuate 1 million people? He saw Sumin's hand tighten into a fist on the table in front of them. She was looking at him, her eyes wide with shock and anger. Kalar was not finished. Do not be sad, friends from Earth, he said, and his tone was like someone talking to a child. This is a great honor for your species. Your people will be remembered as the guardians of this beautiful place. And do not worry. We will help you find a new, more suitable world for your energetic expansion. He made it sound like a gift. He was taking their home and expecting them to be grateful. The session ended. The other delegates began to float or walk out, chatting among themselves. The human matter was settled. Ji-hun sat perfectly still for a long moment. He watched Kalar, who was now speaking with a bird-like delegate, completely unconcerned. Sumin finally spoke, her voice a tight whisper. Ji-hun, they can't be serious. 1 million people, they just decided. Ji-hun stood up. His movements were slow and precise. The polite smile he had worn for 5 years was gone. In its place was a calm, hard emptiness. Come, he said to Sumin. We have work to do. Back in their small office, the mood was grim. The rest of the human team had heard the news. They were all angry and afraid. We have to appeal, one of the junior diplomats said. We can show them the cultural sites, the schools. They don't care about our schools, Sumin said, cutting him off. They care about the moss. They see our cities as a stain on their beautiful painting. Ji-hun was looking out their small window at the passing lights of starships. He called us energetic, Ji-hun said quietly. He sees our will to live, to grow as a simple, primitive energy. Like a storm or a wildfire, something to be managed and controlled. He turned to face his team. His eyes were dark and serious. For 5 years we have been quiet, he said. We listened to their insults. We smiled at their arrogance. We let them think we were weak because peace was worth the price. But this? He pointed a finger towards the window, towards the invisible spot in space where New Daegu orbited its sun. This is not an insult. This is an offense. They have decided they can take 1 million human lives and move them like furniture. They have crossed a line. The room was silent. They had never heard such steel in his voice. What do we do? Sumin asked. We do not appeal, Ji-hun said. We do not beg. We answer. The next day, the assembly chamber was full again. It was a normal day for them. They expected the humans to come and make an emotional, messy plea. They were ready to be patient and kind while saying no. Ambassador Kalar was at his podium. The assembly recognizes the delegation from Earth, he said, a bored tone in his voice. You may speak your piece, Diplomat Park. Park Ji-hun stood up. He did not walk to the small speaker's platform. He remained at his desk. The room was noisy, but it slowly grew quiet. There was something different about him. The usual polite softness was gone. He stood straight and still, his hands resting on the table. Ambassador Kalar, Ji-hun began, his voice calm but clear, carrying to every corner of the room. Members of the Galactic Assembly. The last of the chatter died away. All eyes were on the human. 5 cycles ago, Ji-hun said, we came to you in peace. We offered you our hand in friendship. We have been patient. We have been quiet. We accepted your guidance. He chose the word carefully, letting it hang in the air. You have taken our quiet for weakness. You have taken our patience for permission. You have looked at our home, at the world we built with our own hands, and you have called it yours to give away. Kalar shifted uncomfortably. Diplomat Park, this is not the place for hysterics. The decision has been made for the greater good. The greater good? Ji-hun repeated, his voice dropping, becoming even colder. You speak of a moss. I speak of a city where children are sleeping. I speak of farmers who have spent years making the soil rich. I speak of 1 million lives that you have just erased with a word. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on Kalar. The Galactic Assembly has crossed a line. The phrase echoed in the silent chamber. No one had ever spoken to the Assembly like this. You have offended us, Ji-hun continued, his words simple and hard. Do not mistake our past quiet for weakness. It was a courtesy you have now exhausted. Kalar finally found his voice. You are out of order. If you do not comply, there will be consequences. Compliance measures will be enforced. Ji-hun's lips formed a thin, cold smile. It was not a friendly sight. There will be consequences, he agreed. But not for us. He picked up a small data slate from his desk. It contained all their work, all their simple listening devices. He looked at his team and gave a single sharp nod. Then, without another word to the assembly, Park Ji-hun turned and walked away from the human desk. Kang Soo-min and the rest of the delegation fell in behind him. Their footsteps were the only sound in the vast, stunned chamber. They walked out of the room, leaving their quiet behind them. What followed now would be anything but quiet. The silence in the human quarters was heavy and thick. It was not the quiet of peace, but the quiet before a storm. Park Ji-hun stood by the main console, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked out the viewport, but he was not seeing the stars. He was seeing the faces of the people on New Daegu. Kang Soo-min worked quickly at the comms panel. Her fingers flew over the controls. "I am sending the coded burst to Earth Command now," she said, her voice tight. "They will have the message in 3 minutes." The rest of the small team moved around the room. They were packing data drives, shutting down non-essential systems. They were leaving. After Ji-hun's words in the chamber, they could not stay. It was no longer safe. They did not expect that, one of the younger aides, a man named Kim Dae, said. He sounded both scared and excited. The look on Kalar's face. He was shocked. He was insulted, Soo-min corrected, not looking up from her screen. Shock will turn to anger. Anger will turn to action. We need to be gone before that happens. Ji-hun finally turned from the viewport. His face was calm, but his eyes were like dark ice. He believes we are having an emotional outburst. He thinks we will calm down and come back to beg for forgiveness. He walked to his own terminal and began to erase sensitive files. That is the Velian way. They have loud arguments, then they forget. They do not understand that when we are silent, we are at our most dangerous, and we are no longer being silent. A soft chime came from the console. Soo-min looked at the readout. The message is received. Earth Command acknowledges. They are activating the Guardian Protocol. She let out a slow breath. It is really happening. Just then, the main door to their quarters slid open with a quiet hiss. Everyone in the room froze. Standing in the doorway was Ambassador Kalar. He was alone. His tall frame seemed to fill the entrance. His large, dark eyes scanned the room, taking in the packed boxes and the activated security screens. His expression was not one of rage, but of cold, controlled displeasure. He stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. Diplomat Park, Kalar said, his voice a low hum. That was a very unfortunate performance in the chamber today. Ji-hun did not stop his work. He continued to methodically wipe his terminal. It was not a performance, Ambassador. It was a statement of fact. Kalar took another step into the room. He looked at the packed crates. You are preparing to leave? This is a mistake. A rash decision. You are letting your emotions control you. It is a logical response to an act of aggression. Ji-hun replied, his tone flat. Aggression? Kalar let out a short, dismissive sound. This is preservation. You see a threat where there is only wisdom. The galaxy is a delicate place, Diplomat Park. Your species is new to it. You do not yet understand the responsibilities that come with walking among the stars. Ji-hun finally turned to face him. We understand the responsibility to protect our people. We understand that a home is not something you give away. You are not giving it away. Kalar's patience was clearly thinning. You are being asked to relocate for a higher purpose. The Lumen Moss is a treasure for the entire assembly. Your colony is temporary. It can be moved. We will help you. That is your line, Ji-hun said, his voice dangerously quiet. You believe you can decide what is temporary for us. You believe your purpose is higher than our lives. That is the offense. Kalar drew himself up to his full height. I came here to give you a chance to correct your mistake, to withdraw your threats. Come back to the chamber tomorrow. Apologize for your tone. Accept the will of the assembly. We can forget this ever happened. Ji-hun looked at Kalar for a long moment. He saw no malice in the alien's face, only a deep, unshakable arrogance. That was the most dangerous thing of all. Kalar truly believed he was being reasonable. We will not be there tomorrow, Ji-hun said, and we do not make threats. We make promises. A flicker of real anger finally showed in Kalar's eyes. Then you leave me no choice. A compliance fleet is already being dispatched to New Daegu. They will ensure the peaceful evacuation of the colony. If your people resist. He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. They will be removed by force. Do you understand? This is for the safety of everyone. The room was utterly still. Kim Dae had stopped packing. Sumin's hands were clenched on the edge of the console. Ji-hun took a step towards Kalar. He was much shorter than the Velian, but he seemed to fill the space between them. Listen to me very carefully, Ambassador, Ji-hun said, each word sharp and clear. If your compliance fleet approaches New Daegu with hostile intent, if a single one of your ships fires a weapon, if a single one of your soldiers sets foot on that world with a weapon in their hand. He paused, looking directly into Kalar's dark eyes. Then that will be the last mistake the Galactic Assembly ever makes. Kalar was silent for a full 10 seconds. He seemed to be processing the sheer scale of the defiance. He was not used to being spoken to this way. No one spoke to the Velians this way. So be it, Kalar said, his voice cold and final. You have chosen your path. You will learn the price of pride. He turned and swept out of the room, the door sliding shut behind him. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, Sumin let out a shaky breath. The fleet is already on its way. Yes, Ji-hun said. He returned to his terminal. The erasure was complete. Now we see if they are foolish enough to follow through. They finished their work in silence. Within an hour, they were walking through the bright, polished corridors of the station for the last time. Other delegates saw them and looked away quickly. The news had spread. The humans were leaving. The quiet ones had roared, and now everyone was nervous. They reached their ship, a small, unremarkable vessel the assembly had permitted them. It was called Morning Star. As soon as the hatch was sealed, Ji-hun went straight to the bridge. Take us out, Pilot Lee, Ji-hun said. The engines hummed to life. The Morning Star detached from the docking ring and began to move away from the great station. On the view screen, the shining jewel of the assembly grew smaller. Setting course for the edge of the system, Pilot Lee said. Then we make the jump for home. Ji-hun nodded. He sat in the command chair, watching the screen. He was thinking of New Daegu. He was thinking of the compliance fleet, 3 powerful Velian gravity sail cruisers already on their way. He was thinking of the 1 million people who had no idea what was coming for them. Sumin came and stood beside him. Do you think they will really attack? She asked quietly. I do not know, Ji-hun admitted. Kalar believes his own words. He believes he is bringing order. He believes we will break when we see his strength. He looked at her, but he has never seen our strength. He has never seen what happens when you push a human into a corner. The Guardian Protocol, it is ready? She asked. It has been ready for a long time, Ji-hun said. We knew a day like this might come. We hoped it would not. The Morning Star flew on, leaving the center of galactic power behind. They were going home, but home was now on the edge of a war. A war they did not want, but a war they would not run from. Back on the station, Ambassador Kalar stood in his luxurious office, looking at the same star field. He watched the small human ship disappear. He felt a mix of irritation and pity. They were so stubborn, so emotional. They would learn. The compliance fleet would be a valuable lesson. The humans would see the superior technology and power of the Velians, and they would fall in line. It was for their own good. He turned to his aide. Send a message to the compliance fleet. Tell them to proceed. The humans on New Daegu are to be evacuated. Use minimal force if necessary, but make it clear that resistance is useless. The aide bowed and left to carry out the order. Kalar was certain that in a few days, he would receive a message from a humbled Park Ji-hun, asking to negotiate terms of surrender. He was sure of it. He did not understand that he had just poked a sleeping bear. He did not know that the quiet of Earth was over, and a storm was coming that would shake the very foundations of his galaxy. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The bridge of the Velian flagship, Light of Reason, was a place of quiet calm. Commander Tael, a seasoned officer of the Velian fleet, watched the star lines stretch and warp on the main view screen. His 3 gravity sail cruisers were moving through the void towards the human colony, New Daegu. The mission was simple. Show strength, ensure a peaceful evacuation, and teach the humans a lesson about respecting the will of the assembly. His communications officer turned. Commander, we are receiving a final confirmation from Ambassador Kalar. We are to proceed. Use minimal force if needed, but the evacuation is mandatory. Tael nodded. Acknowledge the message. and open a channel to the colony. A moment later, the main screen changed. It showed a man with a tired but determined face, standing in a simple office on the planet's surface. This was Governor Baksun, the leader of New Daegu. "Governor Bak," Tal began, his voice echoing with authority. "I am Commander Tal of the Galactic Assembly Compliance Fleet. You are aware of the Assembly's decision. You and your people have one standard cycle to begin an orderly evacuation. Please confirm your compliance." Governor Bak did not look scared. He looked resolute. "Commander Tal," he said, his voice steady. "New Daegu is our home. We will not be leaving. Please relay this message to the Assembly. We do not accept their decision." Tal felt a flicker of annoyance, just like their diplomat, stubborn. "Governor, this is not a negotiation. It is a directive. My ships are equipped to enforce this order. Resistance would be unwise." On the screen, Governor Bak almost smiled. It was a strange reaction. "We are not resisting, Commander. We are simply staying in our homes. What you do next is your choice." The communication ended. The screen returned to a view of the peaceful blue-green planet. Tal frowned. This was not going as planned. He expected fear, pleading, not this calm defiance. "Scan the colony," he ordered. "Look for any defensive preparations. Weapons, shields, anything." The sensor officer worked for a minute. "Scan complete, Commander. We are detecting standard colonial infrastructure. Power grids, communication towers. No energy signatures for planetary shields. No weapon emplacements beyond small personal arms. They are defenseless." Tal felt a surge of confidence. Of course they were. Humans had no major warships, no planetary defenses. What could they do? "Move the fleet into high orbit," he commanded. "Target the main spaceport with a low-yield warning shot. Let them see our power. Let them understand that we are serious." The three cruisers, sleek and shining, moved into position over the planet. The light of reason powered up its main particle beam. A bright, clean lance of energy shot down towards the planet's surface. It was aimed well away from any population centers at the large, empty landing field of the spaceport. The ground erupted in a silent flash of light and molten rock. "Now hail them again," Tal said. "Let us see if their courage has faded." But before the communications officer could obey, the sensor console began to beep urgently. "Commander, I am detecting a new gravitational signature. It is massive. It just appeared out of nowhere." Tal spun around. "What? Where?" "Directly between us and the planet." On the view screen, the empty space in front of New Daegu began to shimmer. It was like looking through heat haze. Then a shape started to form. It was not sleek or shining. It was angular, dark, and huge. It looked like a black iron mountain floating in space. Its surface was covered in hard edges and blunt protrusions. It was ugly. It was terrifying. "What is that?" Tal whispered. The new ship was easily twice the size of his flagship. It had no elegant curves, no graceful lines. It was all brutal functional geometry. Along its side in simple white letters was a name. UNS Indomitable. A new voice filled the bridge of the light of reason. It was a calm young male voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. "Velian vessels. This is Admiral Lee Jun of the United Nations ship Indomitable. You have fired upon a human world. This is an act of war. Power down your weapons and withdraw immediately." Tal was stunned. A human warship? Where did it come from? How did it hide? This was impossible. "Scan that ship," he barked, his composure broken. The sensor officer's voice was shaky. I cannot get a clear reading, Commander. Its hull is scattering our sensors. I am reading massive power levels, but the nature is unknown. It does not match any known technology." Tal's mind raced. This was a bluff. It had to be. The humans had built a big, scary-looking ship to frighten him. He would not be frightened. "Target that vessel," he ordered. "Fire a full-power particle beam. Let us see how strong their hull really is." The light of reason glowed as it gathered energy. A moment later, a thick, brilliant beam of white energy lanced out, striking the center of the Indomitable's dark hull. Tal watched, expecting to see the human ship torn apart. The beam hit. There was a flash of light, but when it faded, the Indomitable was still there. Its dark hull showed only a faint smoldering mark where the beam had struck. It was like throwing a stone at a mountain. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Lee Jun watched the display without emotion. He was a young man for such an important job, but his eyes were old and calm. "They have fired upon us, Admiral. his tactical officer said. I see that, Li Jun replied. Activate the mass shadow field and prepare the primary kinetic launcher. Target their lead ship's main engine array. We do not want to destroy them. We want to send a message. On the Velian bridge, alarms started to blare. Commander, our gravity sails. They are failing. We are losing power. The smooth, graceful flight of the Velian ship suddenly became unstable. Their gravity sails, which use the natural pull of stars and planets to move, were useless. It was as if space itself had become flat and dead around them. The Indomitable was projecting a field that canceled out gravity, the very thing the Velian ships needed to fly. Emergency power to thrusters, Tile shouted, his voice rising in panic. Turn us around! But it was too late. New weapon signature from the human ship. The sensor officer screamed. It is a kinetic projectile. Massive size. Incredible speed. On the screen, a large pointed metal rod shot out from the front of the Indomitable. It was not a laser. It was not an energy beam. It was just a giant, heavy piece of metal, fired at a terrifying speed. It was a simple, brutal weapon. The Velian point defense lasers tried to target it, but it was moving too fast. It was designed to be hit. It was just a solid piece of tungsten. The rod struck the light of reason not with an explosion, but with a terrible physical impact. It punched straight through the elegant hull, through decks and compartments, and out the other side. It left a perfect round, clean hole. For a second, the ship was silent. Then the air inside rushed out into the vacuum of space. Alarms wailed. Lights flickered. The light of reason was dead in space. Wounded but not destroyed. A message had been sent. The calm voice of Admiral Li Jun returned to the bridge. Your gravity-based technology is useless against us. Your energy weapons are ineffective. Your ship is disabled. The other two Velian vessels will now power down their weapons and retreat, taking your flagship in tow. If you do not comply, the next shot will be aimed at your command bridge. Tail stood frozen, looking at the hole in his ship. He looked at the dark, monstrous human vessel on his screen. He finally understood. The humans had not been hiding their weakness. They had been hiding their strength. Their technology was not primitive. It was just different. It was built for one thing only, to win a fight. He looked at his communications officer, his face pale. Send the order to the other ships. Stand down. Power down all weapons. His voice was a broken whisper. We are withdrawing. As the two other Velian ships, now helpless without their gravity sails, moved carefully to grab the wounded light of reason, Admiral Li Jun watched them from his command chair. He opened a channel to Earth. The message has been delivered, he said simply. The line has been held at New Daegu, but the war is just beginning. The news traveled through the Galactic Assembly like a shockwave. The Velian compliance fleet had been humiliated, not destroyed but disabled by a single human ship. The story was unbelievable. A giant, dark warship that appeared from nowhere. A weapon that was just a metal rod. Gravity sails that simply stopped working. On the Velian homeworld, Ambassador Kalar watched the report in his office. The video showed the light of reason being towed away. A clean hole punched through its center. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This was not an emotional outburst. This was a planned, calculated response. Park Ji-hun's words echoed in his mind. There will be consequences. He had not believed it. Now he had to. The High Council was in an uproar. The Grithek, a species of large, sturdy bipeds, slammed a heavy fist on the table. They attacked a Velian fleet. This is an act of war against the entire assembly. We must gather our combined forces and crush them. Show them the price of defiance. Other delegates shouted their agreement. The mood was for swift and overwhelming revenge. Kalar stood slowly. The room quieted, waiting for the senior Velian to speak. We must be careful, Kalar said, his voice less confident than before. We underestimated them. Their technology is different. We do not yet understand it? Different, the Grithek delegate roared. They use rocks. It is primitive. A primitive rock, Kalar said coldly. That disabled our most advanced cruiser in one shot. Their ship ignored our particle beam. Their defense field neutralized our primary propulsion. Do not call it primitive, call it effective. He looked around the room. We will go to war, but we will not be reckless. We will send the full 7th Battle Fleet, 20 cruisers. They will overwhelm this Indomitable and secure the new Daegu system. We will show humanity that one victory does not win a war. The plan was set. The mighty 7th Fleet, a glorious armada of shining Velian gravity sail cruisers, assembled and made the jump towards New Daegu. They were confident. They had numbers. They had technology. They had the full might of the Galactic Assembly behind them. They arrived at the edge of the New Daegu system in a blaze of folded space and light. Their formation was perfect, a beautiful display of military precision. On the bridge of the new flagship, Pride of the Assembly, the fleet admiral waited for the human response. He expected to see the single dark ship. He was ready for it. What he saw instead confused him. His sensor officer reported, "Admiral, I am detecting multiple small contacts. They are everywhere, hundreds of them. They are too small to be ships. They are the size of escape pods." On the view screen, hundreds of tiny boxy objects were drifting towards the fleet. They had no elegant shapes. They were just simple metal cubes with small crude chemical rockets on the back. "What are they?" the admiral asked, puzzled. Before anyone could answer, the cubes suddenly changed course. Their rockets flared and they sped directly towards the Velian ships. "Point defense lasers! Destroy them!" the admiral ordered. The Velian lasers targeted the cubes. They were easy to hit. When a laser hit a cube, it exploded. But the explosion was not nuclear or plasma-based. It was just a simple, powerful chemical explosion, a blast of fire and metal fragments. The first wave of cubes was destroyed. But there were too many. A dozen, then 2 dozen, slipped through the defensive fire. One cube slammed into the side of a Velian cruiser. The explosion was not huge, but it was focused. It tore a jagged hole in the hull. Another cube hit a gravity sail emitter, twisting the delicate machinery into scrap metal. "They are drones," the sensor officer yelled. "Simple guided bombs. They are homing in on our gravity signatures." The Velian ships, which used gravity for everything, shone like beacons to the simple human drones. The drones, which the human soldiers called wreckers, were cheap, easy to make by the thousands, and required no advanced AI. They just flew towards the strongest gravity pull and exploded on contact. The beautiful Velian formation broke into chaos. Ships tried to maneuver, but their gravity sails were useless in close combat. They were designed for long-range travel and elegant broadsides, not for fighting a swarm of angry metal bees. Then, the Indomitable appeared. It did not decloak slowly this time. It simply dropped its camouflage right in the middle of the Velian fleet. Its kinetic launcher fired again and again. Each shot was a precise, brutal strike. It targeted engine rooms, weapon banks, communication arrays. It did not aim to destroy the ships completely, but to cripple them. The Velian admiral watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically taken apart. His own weapons seemed to have little effect on the human ship. Their energy beams splashed harmlessly against its dark, angled hull. Their missiles were shot down by a storm of rapid-fire projectile weapons, old-fashioned guns that fired solid slugs at high speed. "This is not a battle," the admiral whispered, his voice full of despair. "It is a slaughter. He had no choice. All ships, retreat. Fall back to the rally point. Abandon the system." The surviving Velian cruisers, many of them scarred and leaking atmosphere, turned and fled. It was not a graceful withdrawal. It was a rout. The news of the 7th Fleet's defeat was a catastrophe for the Assembly. Panic began to set in. The humans were not just stubborn, they were unstoppable. The war escalated quickly. Human fleets, which had been built in secret in the dark corners of the solar system, now poured out from behind asteroids and from hidden bases on moons. Their strategy was the same everywhere. They did not fight fair. At the Battle of Cygnus X-1, a human fleet lured a Grythek battle group close to the event horizon of a black hole. Then they activated their mass shadow projectors. The Grythek ships, their own gravity-based stabilizers suddenly useless, were pulled helplessly towards the black hole's crushing grip. They were lost without a single human ship being fired upon. At the mining colony of Kappa Prime, the Assembly sent ground troops to seize a human outpost. The troops were the best of the Tova species, trained in advanced energy weapons. They marched in perfect formation towards the human base. The humans did not meet them in the open. They hid in the rocks and the dust. They used simple projectile rifles that fired pieces of metal. The Tova's personal energy shields were designed to stop lasers and plasma. They could not stop a high-velocity piece of lead. The Tova soldiers in their sleek armor fell one by one, confused and terrified by the simple, brutal effectiveness of the human weapons. A video from that battle became famous. It showed a single human Marine, a woman named Sergeant Che-Wan, holding a narrow canyon pass. Her powered armor was scarred and dented. She used a heavy slug-throwing machine gun. A squad of Tova elites charged her position. She did not move. She stood her ground, the gun roaring in her hands, the empty shell casings flying through the air like golden rain. The Tova were thrown back, their elegant armor shattered. On the Velian homeworld, Ambassador Kalar watched this video in his chamber. He saw the cold, determined look on the human soldier's face. He saw the chaos and the noise and the dirt. This was not the clean, honorable warfare of the assembly. This was something raw and savage. This was survival. He finally understood the depth of his mistake. He had not provoked a diplomatic incident. He had awakened a sleeping giant. He had pushed a species that had spent its entire history learning how to fight and win, no matter the cost. Their technology was not beautiful, but it worked. Their methods were not elegant, but they were effective. The humans were not just winning the battles. They were rewriting the rules of war, and the Galactic Assembly was losing because it had never learned how to fight a war like this. A war where the only rule was to win. The war was over. It had not been a long war. For the Galactic Assembly, it had felt like a nightmare that would not end. Their great fleets were in ruins. Their pride was shattered. Their belief in their own superiority was gone, replaced by a cold, fearful respect for the species from Earth. The great space station near the Orion Nebula was still there. Its halls were still polished and bright, but the feeling was different now. Before, it had been a place of confidence and power. Now, it was a place of nervous waiting. The main chamber was full. Every delegate from every species was in their seat. The air was thick with silence. They were all waiting for one thing: the return of the humans. The large ornate doors at the back of the chamber slid open. Park Ji-hun walked in. He was not dressed in the simple suit he wore before. He wore a formal dark uniform of the Earth Defense Force. It had no bright colors or decorations. It was the color of space itself. Behind him walked Admiral Lee Jun, also in uniform, his face calm and serious. And behind them came Kang Soo-min and the rest of the delegation. They walked in step, their footsteps echoing in the silent room. They did not go to their old seats at the back. They walked down the central aisle, all the way to the front of the chamber. They stopped before the empty central podium. This was where the Velian delegation usually stood. Ji-hun turned to face the assembly. He looked at the hundreds of alien faces. He saw fear. He saw confusion. He saw resentment. He did not care. Ambassador Kalar was sitting in the Velian section. He looked older. The pride was gone from his eyes. He watched Ji-hun waiting. Ji-hun did not use the podium. He did not need to. His voice, when he spoke, was clear and carried to every corner. "Members of the Galactic Assembly," he began. "5 cycles ago, we came to you in peace. You greeted us with condescension. You treated us as inferiors. You believed your way was the only way." He paused, letting his words sink in. No one moved. "You believed you could take our home from us. You believed you could order the movement of 1,000,000 human lives as if they were data on a screen. You were wrong." He looked directly at Kalar. "You called our reaction an emotional outburst. You called our technology primitive. You sent your fleets to teach us a lesson. You have now learned your own lesson. It was a costly one." Ji-hun placed a small data slate on the table in front of him. "The war is over. These are the terms for peace." He tapped the slate. A new document appeared on the main screen above him. It was written in both Galactic Standard and Korean. "First," Ji-hun said, "the world you called New Daegu is and will always be a human world. The evacuation order is revoked permanently. Second, the Galactic Charter is hereby dissolved." A loud murmur went through the crowd. The Charter was the foundation of their civilization. Ji-hun continued, his voice firm. "It will be replaced by a new document, a treaty of mutual coexistence. Humanity will be a founding signatory, and we will hold a permanent veto power over all major galactic decisions." He looked around the room, his gaze hard. "The practice of any species seizing the inhabited worlds of another is abolished. Forever. Your concept of greater good will never again be an excuse for theft." The silence was absolute. They were not being asked. They were being told. Finally, Ambassador Kalar stood up. He seemed smaller than before. "Diplomat Park, this is a surrender." "It is a correction," Ji-hun replied calmly. "It is the establishment of a new reality. one where humanity is not your subject but your peer, a reality you refused to accept when we offered it to you with a smile and an open hand. Kalar shook his head, not in defiance but in confusion. Why hide this power? Why did you not show us your strength from the beginning? Ji-hun considered the question. It was the one every alien in the room was asking. We did not hide our strength, he explained, his tone matter of fact. We showed you our peace. You saw our peace and you called it weakness. You saw our willingness to listen and you called it submission. He took a step closer to the Velian section. We offered you our hand in friendship. You looked at our open hand and you decided to test the fist that was closed behind our back. You chose this path, not us. He gestured to Admiral Lee Jun beside him. We have spent our entire history learning one simple lesson. The only way to guarantee peace is to be too dangerous to provoke. We tried to have peace without the danger. You proved to us that it was not possible. Ji-hun picked up the data slate again. These terms are not negotiable. You will sign this treaty. You will accept humanity as an equal, or the war will resume. And the next time we will not be so surgical in our response. The threat hung in the air. It was not a shout. It was a simple, cold statement of fact. They all knew he meant it. Kalar looked at the faces of the other delegates. The Grythik looked down at the floor. The Tova delegate gave a small, reluctant nod. They were beaten. They had no choice. He looked back at Ji-hun. The human's face was calm, but there was no kindness in it. There was only the firm resolve of someone who had done what was necessary to protect his people. Slowly, Kalar bowed his head. It was a small gesture, but in Velian culture it was a sign of profound defeat and respect. The Velian conquered, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Then he cleared his throat and spoke louder. The Velian conquered accepts the terms. One by one, the other major species voiced their agreement. The silence was broken by a low chorus of acceptance. Ji-hun gave a single sharp nod. Then it is done. He turned and walked to the large central table that was reserved for the leading species. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Admiral Lee Jun sat beside him. Suman and the others took their seats around them. For a moment, no one in the chamber knew what to do. They just stared at the humans, now sitting at the very heart of galactic power. Then, the meeting began. The first meeting of the new assembly. Ji-hun did not speak much. He listened. He watched. But now his quiet was different. It was not the quiet of an observer. It was the quiet of a judge. It was the quiet of a power that had been tested and had proven itself absolute. The other delegates spoke carefully. They looked at him before they proposed anything, trying to read his reaction. The fear was still there, but it was beginning to mix with something else. A new understanding. Earth had remained quiet for a long time. They had offered peace. But the assembly had crossed a line. They had committed the gravest offense. They had threatened a human home, and in doing so, they had learned that the quiet of humanity was not emptiness. It was the calm before the storm. It was the patience of a predator. It was the silence of strength. That silence was now the most powerful sound in the galaxy.